Hey, welcome to Beyond Organic Wine. Thank you so much for listening. I'm Adam Huss, and this episode is really special to me. It's special for many reasons. My guest for this episode is Shannon Mayhew of Brooks Winery in Oregon, and the conversation is just something that I delighted in and hope will delight you as well for many reasons. I'll get into those a little bit. But also, this is the last episode that I will be putting out as a Los Angeles resident. I'm selling my house in Los Angeles and moving out of LA, at least temporarily, to a farm in New York, the Wine Forest Farm, where I'm starting polyculture that involves grapes growing on trees, living trees, no post and wire trellising, in many different styles that are ancient and maybe new, or new expressions of ancient things. I mean, obviously ancient in the sense that that's how vines evolved. I don't like the term married vine, but that's, the shorthand way of calling it. The Italians use that version. To me, that puts too much emphasis on the vine. Why don't we call it a married tree, for example? Because the tree is just as married as the vine. And also, what about all the other lives that are part of that community? I like the idea, and I sort of try to coin this in my book, Wine Liberated. I try to coin this idea of the seven-ish siblings, sort of, in homage to the Three Sisters, if you know the Three Sisters, where we're not thinking about any one of those family members as dominant or more important than the other, but that they all work together and benefit each other and grow together in different ways. I like that idea, more of a Three Sisters thing. Anyway, that's where I'll be moving. And so I'll be closing down Centralis, my winery, by the end of the year here, and just selling off the rest of our inventory. And, won't be making wine immediately because, just growing things right now, and playing a little bit. And, for those of you tuning in who are supporters of Beyond Organic Wine, thank you so much for your support. If you'd like to support this podcast, it is a Substack, and so subscribing to Substack is at the beyondorganicwine.substack.com is the best way you can support it. And also just leaving a great review, telling friends about it, also all super helpful. Thank you so much for your support. And this is entirely listener supported. I couldn't do this without those of you who do support this podcast. So thank you. As I mentioned, I have this book. I wrote a book. It's available for pre-order. It's called Wine Liberated: The Ecological Revolution and the Vintners Inspiring Change. And in that book, in one section, I'm not going to spoil anything, but I do talk about how, while working at Piscinus Ranch, sort of had a great conversation with Kelly Mulville there, that shaped this idea that really I can formulate best as a question, which is, what are we farming? Is viticulture the right word for those of us who, are curious to tune into this podcast and listen to the people that I get to talk to and the ideas that they bring? Is it really about viticulture? Is it really about grapes? Or are we farming something bigger? I would argue that we've begun to discover that if we farm something bigger than grapes, we actually get better tasting grapes. And I think that's what this conversation with Shannon Mayhew of Brooks Winery is about, in essence. It's a conversation with somebody who is not actually a viticulturist, but somebody who is the sustainability director. But that means she gets to tend the land around the vineyards. She's growing gardens. She's doing all kinds of stuff like that. She's thinking about the animals and the birds and the insects and other invertebrates who make that land their home. She's thinking about the land as it extends beyond the borders of just the vineyard property. And she's thinking about how that gets farmed and coordinating and cooperating with neighbors and other vineyards nearby, adjacent to, and supporting everything that they do as well. There's some great things that I would reference. She references the Xerces Society, and I'll include a link to that. I also was reminded of an episode that I did with Jonathan Lundgren of Ecdysis, and I will include a link back to that episode, which is a fantastic episode because Jonathan started life as an entomologist and now is doing this incredible project called the Thousand Farms Initiative, where he's collecting regenerative data or farming data, ecosystem data from farms all across North America, over 1,000 farms. I think it's like 1,700 farms at this point, comparing regenerative farming with every other kind of farming and finding, well, as you might expect, that if you farm something bigger than just your cash crop, you actually end up supporting your cash crop in ways that you couldn't imagine if you just tried to focus on it. I guess my other question that I wrote down as a note for this is your vineyard beautiful? You know, when we think about vineyards, we think about like how they function in our landscape, how much of a space they occupy in our imaginations and in our lives and in the architecture of our landscapes. What does that look like? You know, are they monocultures that are off-putting and uninviting to us humans? Is there a way to make them something else? Is there a way to make what we do something that's immersive, inviting, beautiful? There's a quote that I just have to repeat that Shannon quotes. You'll hear it. It's not her quote, but you know, she's quoting somebody in this interview, and it's beauty is the language of love. And if we're loving our landscapes, if we love wine, beauty seems like to me that it needs to be a very integral part of what we're doing. Anyway, thank you very much and enjoy this really special episode with Shannon Mayhew of Brooks Winery. Shannon, welcome. Thank you for doing this. Welcome to Beyond Organic Wine.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I'm really excited.
Could you introduce yourself and where you are and what you do?
Yeah. So I am currently at Brooks Winery in the Eola Amity Hills in Oregon. So in the Willamette Valley, and my title is Estate Sustainability Director, which I was actually reflecting on that because I knew you'd ask me like, what's your role? And you had said a long time ago, like we don't need to sustain, like we need to be regenerating. Like you had this really great quote. It was like, you don't want to sustain a relationship. You want it to be like something that's always growing, and and so I thought I was like, oh my gosh, my title is reflective of that very cycle. But yeah,
No, I'm having the same problem because we're doing like the Embracing Hybrid Grapes conference, and we want to talk about how these grapes are able to help you have like a and this is the thing, like a more like it's economically sustainable business, you know, like
yeah,
there are and we're like, how do we say that without using the word sustainable? And
yeah.
Elodie's just like, no, it's fine, it's
Yeah.
like we all get what sustainable is. Anyway, sorry.
The state regenerative director would be maybe just like too much for people, I think, to swallow. But we're gonna work towards there, you know.
That would be great. Hey, I mean, you well, what do you do? Let's, instead of your title, like what does that
Yeah.
mean?
Yeah, that's a great question, and that was kind of like the best we could encapsulate the role here because it's kind of been a self um dictated role, which is really fun. It's always evolving and kind of based off of a lot of trust and like me seeing what needs to happen on the land. So it kind of grew. I was started off as a gardener here and was just there's a 2 acre, I think it was probably 1 acre when I started, garden that I was maintaining and growing food for the kitchen. And then as happens, you just kind of start slowly expanding. And I started tackling invasives like blackberry along the margins of the property and just like kind of slowly encroaching closer and closer, like into the entire landscape. And then we started composting, and I was running that, and just kind of kept growing. So now it is kind of more of a land wide management. I help out with the biodynamic certification. Sorry, I should have mentioned we are biodynamic certified. And then we're also B Corp, and I've been working with that in more of like the environmental and climate action part of it. And it's been kind of also now there's this education component where I'm trying to show tasting room staff like ways that we could get them out on the land or ways we can, lower our impact, saving all the plastic from the pallet wrap and dropping that off at like a recycling center where we are guaranteed that it's being recycled, and then monitoring it all too, like how much water we've been saving from all the table waters that get left, and kind of sharing those statistics just to kind of keep driving support from the tasting room staff and get them lowering our turnover and getting people really invested in the company and in the community and the culture here. And then, yeah, helping get the biodynamic sprays out. I've been spreading the compost the last year and kind of keeping soil health in mind. So it's just always running around.
And are you doing a lot of growing your own phytotherapeutic plants, like the plants that you use for your biodynamic preps and things?
Yes, we do. We grow all of them except for equisetum, the horsetail prep,
Yeah.
because that kind of grows wild here. So we can
I was gonna say, I thought I saw it growing there. You're
no,
like,
but
I just don't have to garden it.
no, but the nettle is what I'm also like, oh no, it's getting really out of hand, and we do have a
It
lot of
loves it there, yeah.
yeah, it's like tripled in size since I got here, and we do have a lot of tasting room, like the people who come and taste at the winery, they can walk the gardens, and so and there's always kids kind of running about, and I'm just always like, ugh, I haven't had any reported stings yet, but I need to figure it out.
You have to like prepare them by like saying this is like how you show you're tough,
Yeah,
it's more like it's a badge of courage kind of thing that they can if they get
invite them
stung
to
by
see
nettle and
themselves.
they
Yeah.
cannot cry about it, they're awesome. um I mean it's a compliment to say that like nettle does well there. I mean, nettle is one of those, when you think about what plants are saying to us about our soil and our land, it's, nettle is one of those indicator species that you have great moisture, that you have good loamy rich soil, generally speaking. That's it usually um likes that kind of, it grows and shows best where things are doing well, where you have a good microbiome in the soil and things are doing well. So that's,
Mm.
compliments to the farm.
I hope we made
um
peace with it and it spread.
right, right. um yeah, and I love that. I mean, I would love to talk about what the philosophy behind like having a garden at a winery is.
Mhm.
I mean, obviously, if you have a kitchen, it makes a lot of sense. But why? But why have a? I mean, like, what are the advantages to having a kitchen, having a garden? Having the two work together.
Yeah.
What do Is there? Is this just a drain and detraction from from your wine sales, or yeah? What are your thoughts about that?
Yeah, that's a really great question. And I think it's funny because it is becoming increasingly common to have like little green spaces, even if they're not as intensively cultivated as these now two slowly spreading into 2.5 acres are. But so yeah, of course, it allows us to be really seasonal in our pairings in the kitchen. And so we grow a lot of Rieslings and, of course, Pinot out here. And the amount of SKUs we have are kind of crazy. So we're always rotating through the menu, and just showing different Rieslings and different Pinots. And we also buy a lot of grapes. So the menu is almost changing monthly of the wines that we're sharing, and so having this garden has been really great to like really right now what I've been harvesting is like fabas and cherries, raspberries, currants, and then lots of herbs, and so all of those can kind of fit in with the nuanced flavors and of all the different wines we're pouring. um,
Oh, that's nice.
yeah,
Yeah.
and then even beyond that of just like the functionality of having food that we can locally source, it's been a education space. So we have these classes I've been teaching for about for a year, and it's fun because I always am changing them so I don't get bored. So the most
I know that.
popular one, which was really fascinating to see, I did a medicinal plant class series last year, and it was so popular. So usually drinking wine, and we'll be making like elderflower cordial or salves, or harvesting all these products from the land. And I think one year we made nettle pesto. It's been
Mm.
then it's an opportunity to talk about, why we have these gardens, why do we have these spaces to take care of the land and how it takes care of us in return. I like usually read a little poem or something too, and people, it's kind of the same crowd often, like the same 20 people will come through, and we usually share plants and seeds because in that way too, this is one little habitat that we are taking care of, but it all trickles out. So, I'm always pulling out extra starts and always gathering seed. Actually, that's been a big project right now, is gathering all the lupin seed to get back out to the community so other people can have, this great nitrogen fixing native plant that's like super drought tolerant and has a good taproot that helps break up soils. And so um, I think that's probably what gets me most excited, is knowing that this is just like one part of an entire like line of work we're all trying to like spread outward. And um gosh, I could keep going. It's also,
No, I mean, there's so much in it. That's the thing. It's like I mean, I'm just thinking. Well, keep going. Yeah.
well, so and then also tasting rooms, like we have events, and so often, like we did a wedding for a coworker recently, and she was able to do all her flowers from, properties flowers. I actually did the flowers for her, and so that's a really big cost savings. And
Yeah, that's amazing.
and then just it's a great space for people to interact with, a cultivated garden space that maybe they don't all have access to green spaces. So parents can like take their kids through. There's these like hanging chairs in this one section that people can just be under, as like within the garden. It's called the secret garden, actually. I mean, they just are kind of
Yay.
buffered by all these plants. And I don't know. And what I'm also realizing in all of this is people ask me a lot of questions when they're in the space. I had somebody ask me about like a quince tree. They thought it was a basil plant. So I'm realizing, I know. So I'm realizing just how little is known, and like this is just one way that people can kind of get their hands dirty and just start to experience, what it looks like to grow food, and what it looks like to be part of an ecosystem like that you're folded into, instead of it just being, separate over there. You kind of become part of it, because it's the way to describe it, I guess, is the tasting room is kind of above it all, and then you can walk down these stairs, and then you're just kind of folded into it, and kind of like hugs the entire property. And then I'm creating these hedgerows. The Xerces Society, I don't know if anybody knows
Yeah.
about them. They're an invertebrate conservation group in Portland. They're incredible, and they've been giving out these grants for like pollinator hedgerow plants. And so you just need to be a farm to apply. Although in some areas, like Portland, for example, they do give it out to residential spaces. So we have been awarded 4 hedgerow grants, and so I've kind of created a full property. I call it, a habitat corridor all through the edges of the property, because it's not all cultivated. Um,
Hmm.
and then also, as a biodynamic, winery, we have to have a certain space that's reserved for, like non-cultivated grapes. And so you can use your inner rows, actually, technically, but we don't need to use that as a, you know, space, because we have the garden, and we have this lower hill area where we also have bees and chickens, and I have totally not even mentioned that we have chicken, like this is a small flock of chickens. I want to expand, and I want to get ducks too, but the chicken coop is located, I know, right on the edge of the vineyard, so they can run in the vineyard when it's, not, the grapes have not hit veraison. And then I think there's legally an interval. I always forget the date, but I always just put them in before veraison gets too close, because they'll start eating the grapes.
Yeah.
And then they can go into a 3 pasture system. So I never have to like really move them, because the great thing about chickens, right, is that they naturally coop up at night. So they're able to just kind of free range in the vineyard, which people love watching from the tasting room deck. Is just like our rooster like chasing after all the girls and under the vines. And it feels really good just walking in the vineyard when you're kind of doing, inspections of grapes and trying to figure out, cluster samples, and you like look over and there's a chicken chasing you in a good way, not in a scary way.
Yeah, they think you might have something to feed them or something.
Yeah.
Or you'll keep them safe from the hawks. I saw when I was there, I also love chickens and was watching the chickens and, admiring their beauty. It's, I always say, like, if you forget that chickens are chickens, they're like some of the most exotic birds that
Yeah.
you'll ever see, like you go out, like if you just saw them in the wild and didn't know what a chicken was, you'd be like, God, that's a gorgeous bird. You know what I
I never
mean? Like
thought of that. That's so
and
true.
yeah, they're so colorful and
Yeah.
um, and then all of a sudden they all went running back to the coop, and then seconds later this hawk swoops through,
Oh my god,
um, yeah, it was great. Like
that's
they
hilarious.
were well aware. I think probably the rooster warned them or something. He was like had his head up while the other ones were.
Yeah, we have a pretty good rooster. His name's Dill, and he
Dill, like the
uh,
herb.
yeah, like the herb, because there was
Yeah.
also it was Dill and Basil, but Basil had to be relocated because he was a little loud, so it doesn't
Oh
really
yeah.
go with the tasting room to have a
Nice.
constantly, yeah, it's not great, but he
Oh
has a
God,
happy home now, so
why hasn't anybody bred quiet roosters? That would be such
mhm.
a smart thing to do. People, that would be a hit. Sort of
Dill's
like the
pretty good.
small sheep that Rob is breeding there. Like little sheep and quiet roosters.
There's
It'd
some
be
people who
amazing.
have loud roosters as neighbors, they're like, "Please, like, right now."
Right. Right. Um, I mean, there's so much in what you're saying. Like to me, I'll just go back to a couple things.
Okay.
Just the interactive element, like in a way, like I wish that you guys lowered your tasting room down to the level of the garden. You know what I mean? Because
I know.
I mean, there's so much important about that I think is overlooked. I mean, my whole approach to the farming that I'm doing with grapes is to make a space that invites people in. You think about like how a vineyard is kind of keeps you at arm's length. It feels like there's a bunch of fences that you're fenced in, and if you sit down, it's kind of uncomfortable. You wouldn't want to picnic actually in most vineyards.
Yeah.
Um, but what we're trying to do is like invite people who have been disconnected from these systems of life to re-engage and reenact and re-immerse themselves in them, to like just begin the process of like feeling comfortable in these spaces and
Mhm.
asking those questions, feeling like curious enough to be like, what is that, a basil plant? Like, no, that's actually a quince tree. But good guess. Like, I just think there's something so profound about that it's bigger work than selling wine, of course, but it is. I think it's so important and such an opportunity that you have when you have a space like a vineyard. When you have a beautiful hillside tasting room like Brooks has, and you have that nice hill there, that
Yeah.
of course, like if we could, and also the climate of Oregon, where you could actually serve meals in a garden, where people can actually see the things growing that they're eating, were used to flavor their food or be their food, or and just the flower element too. I mean, just
Mhm.
beauty, the idea that like these we don't just use these spaces just to produce like a product to make a living, but like yes, it saves you money if you're decorating for a wedding, right? But it's also like you could just put them on the tasting room tables, and it's just beauty. There's just something lovely about that. Obviously I'm pro what you're doing. should be I should try to
Bias.
be I should try to be like a devil's advocate. Like, this is such a waste.
We do plant very drought tolerant, a lot of natives, and I leave it all wild and uncut over winter, which is a big conversation with people. Leave all the leaves, and so that's
You
probably
mean
when
in the gardens?
yeah, just
Yeah.
it all stays up and uncut. So, and things get like my lupin can get a little aphidy.
Uh-huh.
Um, the what is it? The borage can get mildew. We also do comfrey that gets mildewy, and it's part of it.
Yeah.
And yeah, and then that's a whole another question too, is people are like, how are you growing all this food? And then I can talk to them about the comfrey, tea that I make, and or they can smell it when I pour it into the garden. That's always, I try to do that before guests arrive because that's probably not great for tasting notes. And I don't know if you've done comfrey tea, right? It's super smelly.
I've only done nettle tea, which I was actually going to talk about, but I mean, as like a, not sorry, I was thinking for myself, but you mean like as a soil
Yeah, yeah, yeah. To feed
applicant,
like your tomatoes or your nightshades. It's
right? Yes, yeah, yeah,
Oh,
yeah, yeah.
yeah, it's kind of like the poor man's cow, like nettle too, but it's really high in potash. So like seed
Oh,
your tomatoes and peppers like nettle tea early on, the same nettle ferment. And
oh,
then when they start setting flowers, that's when they're gonna need more potassium. So that's when you kind of switch over to a comfrey. But it smells worse
okay.
than like a nettle ferment. Oops, sorry for that.
Oh, it's okay.
Um and uh and it's really like where was I with that? I got totally sidetracked. But yeah, it smells really
It
bad, and
stinks.
I've been known to spill it on myself and then walk into the tasting room and just be like, "Oh
They
my
kick
god."
you out.
Yeah, they're just like, "Please leave." So it's great. I don't have to have any inputs. I mean, obviously, other than compost, and we have a really cool three uh, tiered system of compost. And so anything from the tasting room, obviously, we have to kind of supplement things beyond the garden. And so if there's bread that's gone bad or anything like that, we can throw it into the compost, and then that makes rich soil. And we've also started an employee composting program. So everybody gets sent home with buckets if they don't have access to a compost, and then they can bring it and compost it here. So, um,
Nice.
but yeah,
Yeah,
and
what
our
a great idea.
the I've been reading. Have you read Nicole Masters For the Love of Soil?
Yes. Well, I listened to it, but
Yeah,
yes.
it's just I've been rereading it recently, and I was just like, we have a vermicompost system here, but I was like, man, I really need to start actually integrating the sprays, like not just like feeding the worms. I need to be taking the castings and spraying that, because I think that's really going to take our soil. And I would love to scale that up and get that into the vineyard too with our BD sprays, because I think I've been underutilizing the worm castings. So that's
Mm.
to be done.
Oh, fantastic. Yeah, no, I mean, I've seen incredible stuff from worm castings. I mean, it's kind of hard because I've done everything all at once, like chickens, worms,
Yeah.
biochar and everything. And now I can't even grow wine grapes here because it's like
So
they
right.
just climb over the house and take over my life. Um, but but yeah, apparently it's good soil. Too good.
And some nettle in
Um,
it.
yeah, yeah, I should actually. That's funny. Uh, well, I was thinking, I mean, I don't know if this is something, maybe you don't know either. I don't know how, I mean, I'm sure you do know, but when people show up at the tasting room as a group, are there people who sometimes don't drink that are there just to like be the designated driver, or they're, whatever, they're too young, or they just aren't drinkers, but they're there with their friends?
Yeah, we have that whole spectrum. So, a lot of kids, and
Yeah.
that they do great here in the gardens, and that they get really excited. And then I don't know, that's a really fun opportunity. I had a father and a son wander around the property the other day, and our neighbors had horses. I was like kind of like watching them like have this like really magical moment with these horses, and then they came over to talk to me about like where the chickens were, because I like had moved the chickens in the last 3 years with their new coop setup, and I was just talking to them about that purpose. And then I was like, you should go walk over to that cherry tree, throw him on your shoulders, and you guys can pick some cherries. And so they had like that whole experience, and just picking cherries on your dad's shoulders at a winery, while everybody's like up drinking wine. So we facilitate a lot of that. But I had a man come in with his wife, and he was birding in the garden while she was up there drinking. He had no interest in wine, so he just came down with his binos, and that's what we call binoculars in the birding community. Sorry.
That's great. The
And
binos.
I think of myself as a birder too, very nerdy. But so there's that, and then we also do a lot of other kinds of like beverages too, and then the food options are here too. So we have NA wine, and then we have beer too. We have coffee, tea. That's the idea, is to create an inclusive space. And
Oh, that's
yeah,
great. I mean, so that was my idea, was like, if not an NA wine. And do you guys make that, or are you selling somebody else's product?
other products. Yeah, we have like a whole, I
Nice.
think we did an NA wine flight that might still be available. So, and we had an NA wine conference, but we don't make it ourselves. We're a very small winery. We
Right.
do,
Yeah.
yeah, we do it a lot in a very small space with very few tanks. So it's very creative ingenuity on behalf of the production team. Yeah, it's I'm very impressed with what they can do.
Well, I mean, what I was thinking was something, I'm guessing that there's some, there, you're probably part of a witchy tradition to a certain extent, if you are a gardener and herbalist and biodynamic person and like birds and stuff like that. And I'm thinking like I mean that in the best way, but like
Not offended.
the you're part of a very ancient tradition. And I was just thinking, like, you know using some of those garden herbs to create some of these like beverages, like you could become sort of a, like, what are they, like a mixologist, but like where it's herbal concoctions and things like that, for where you're creating special, like, signature beverages and things
Yeah.
like that that are tasty and refreshing and NA and also like
Yeah.
um slightly medicinal, like
Yeah.
whatever, like they whatever cleansing or uplifting or whatever they might be.
Yeah, I would love to do that. I mean, we have so at this point we have like we're gonna have an elderflower forest, and that elderflower cordial is just so delicious. And we have
Oh wow,
honey from
yeah.
our hives. Like, it's a good idea. I would I'd have
Yeah.
to put the kitchen on it though. I think just for capacity,
Right, right, right.
but and I'm sure they would
Maybe
say we're too busy to.
you could be the the thought,
Yeah,
the guider of knowing the properties of these plants and how
yeah.
to what to blend together to make something yummy and efficacious in whatever way.
Well,
Yeah.
just as part of like the sharing network that is, Brooks Wine, like just the Oregon wine group we were talking about before we started recording is just how in Oregon people are just so it's a very community collaborative space. And so there's a winery like right tucked behind us on the hill, and he knows I have tons of lavenders, and he asked me if he could get a good bundle of lavender to make. I think he was making like a lavender shrub, or I forget
Mm.
what it was. He gave me last year's bottling from the lavender too. So I mean he's already doing it. I don't see why we can't, but yeah, just
Hey, yeah. Yeah,
yeah.
for sure.
Oh, and then
No, that's great.
also we have club members who make beer out of the yarrow here. So they're actually, I have them on my calendar for this next Tuesday. They're coming to pick up their yarrow for their, because it's like a
Oh, that's
traditional
awesome.
hop. Yeah. We're like,
Wow, so many, yeah, that I mean, this is fantastic. Like I just think once you incorporate biodiversity, you start to all of these connections start to spill out. Like you don't even know until until like your club members like, wait, you have a bunch of yarrow? Like I make beer and would love that. You know what I mean? Like
yeah,
now you've got an additional level of connection and community with
there's,
these people. That I just think is lovely and a
yeah.
nice thing that wouldn't have happened if you hadn't had a garden, you know?
There's a saying in gardening. It's called "If you build it, they will come." And I guess that could. I've never thought of it as the human realm. It's usually like the insects and the
Yeah.
birds, but and the frogs, all the good things. But I'm like, oh my gosh, it also applies to people. Like if you build it,
Yeah.
they come and be in that space, and they want to. We're supposed to interact with plants, and I mean, Robin Wall Kimmerer talks about it in her book. It's just like harvesting from the land makes it produce more, right? Because that's how it's the give and take and that reciprocity. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Well said. Yeah, that's really beautiful. Um, Now on the dark side,
Okay.
you mentioned invasives and blackberries. I mean, what is your relationship with the word invasive?
I when I said it too, I was like, "Ooh, I'm gonna get pushback."
I'm just
It's
asking questions here.
it's like sustainability. It just comes to the tongue really easy, and I know
Yeah.
that there's blackberry can serve as a great hedgerow plant, and it's funny because we do steward the honeybee hives here, and technically for honeybees in Oregon, it's called the nectar flow. When it comes on is when the blackberries bloom, because those are so prolific in the area that provides their biggest like nectar boost to
Oh wow.
isn't that
Yeah.
crazy?
Yeah.
So and I still make blackberry jam every year from like wild blackberries. So it's I
But
will admit I have pretty much fully eradicated it from the property. I mean, I have to keep mowing it, but
yeah,
I have no qualms about it being in other areas. I just,
right.
yeah, I have such a fixation on like natives, but it,
No, well, I mean, yeah, I mean, a lot of good reasons for both, for concern about the one and appreciation of the other, for sure.
yeah, yeah. But
Um,
anything in the rose family is seen as really desirable for bees because it's got a really high like pollen is really high in protein, and so they're blackberries in the rose family. So what I find that they kind of have replaced the blackberry with is our raspberry patch. They are like always in there, which is interesting because it's very similar flower.
mm,
So they're not starving. There's actually I and honeybee keeping has been really interesting because I've always been very into native bees, and so trying to balance that with something that honeybees are livestock, and so how do we coexist on this space? Just like vines are
right.
not native either, and so how do we? It's a messy jumble of like we're trying to toe both lines and kind of create a balance, right? And so
Yeah.
just making sure we're stocking correctly, and making sure that with along with the cultivated foods we have, there's also a little bit of wild patches of natives. And yeah, I don't know if I went on a weird tangent there.
No, but you said something. Well, I mean, we're talking about natives and invasives and whatever, but um, it's really like you brought up two really important points that I don't think that might take some people aback a bit. Grapevines not being native, and well, and of course, honeybees are not native either.
Yeah.
But that is true in Oregon about grapevines. There isn't a native species to the Northwest. Once you're out of Vitis californica range in southern Oregon, there's really no known native species up north of that. On the west coast there, the northwest coast, and that's a really interesting part about there because it seems like such a great place to grow grapes in so many ways. Um, but yeah, it's anyway. Just want to point that out. There's no real profound thing there, but something. So,
Something to
so
take a look. Yeah.
other than like I have, like really gone nuts trying to figure out why. And my only thinking is the dominant currents, even though like the climate and soil and everything, I think is just perfectly fine for grapes there. The way the weather patterns move is from north to south, and so of course they're not bringing like, and so bird flows and things like animal
Mhm.
flows and stuff like that are going to follow those weather patterns for the most part. It's hard to work against the California current there on
Yeah.
the west coast of North America, and so my guess is that's probably why. Like you just have you know you have species that that have dealt with coming from north to south,
Mhm.
and the grapes probably evolved further south and moved north and just didn't have the time to get up there is my guess. I don't know I've spent a lot of time thinking about why there's nothing native up in that part of the world,
Yeah.
because it's
And
kind
it's
of a unique
just so
phenomenon.
prolific in California, the wild grape out there. Like I remember
Yeah,
would take over right
yeah,
in the area.
yeah, yeah. And I mean, like, there's 25 species of grapes native to North America. The southeast of the United States is like just rich with grape genetics. There's like
Yeah.
so many different species of grapes in the southeast, and yeah, the southeast, eastern, the Appalachian region is just rife with grapes of all different varieties. So it's a really interesting. And Texas, has like 5 or 6 different species just in Texas.
Mhm.
Yeah, and so I don't know. It's really interesting, but of course not in Texas, in the wetter parts
Yeah.
of Texas, but some drier parts. But yeah. Anyway, uh, what got you into gardening?
Mm, that's funny.
Like it's
I
yeah.
yeah, I grew up in not like a big gardening family, but I grew up in Napa, and so I was going to UC Davis, and was going back and visiting my parents. I think my freshman year of college, and was walking. We did this loop. We lived on the edge of town, so I did this loop all the time around these vineyards, which was just normal. We'd always just walk our dogs by these vineyards, and I saw this really big bee die off event. There's all these there were honeybees on the in the middle of the road when
Mm.
so I like got back home and I just started researching and I reported it. I forget who you report the, like die offs like that to. And then I just was like, okay, well, what do we do? And I just started going down some rabbit holes and was learning about hedgerows. The Xerces Society had a lot of information online back then, and they still do really great resources. And so I just started cold calling wineries and being like, hey, I just saw this whole thing. Like, do you want to build a hedgerow? Got a lot of no responses. And then there is this one tiny winery out in Calistoga. They're still active. Their name's Casa Nuestra and family owned, really funky, fun, like old property with old vines. And the winemaker's wife who runs the property, she said, "Yeah, come on out and design a hedgerow." Just like took a chance on me, and so I had a summer internship there, and it just has just cascaded since then. And so I think I even changed my major. I think I went plant science, and it just like once you start learning about plants, I was just captivated. So they're able to just take sunlight and create food for everyone, including themselves out of it. And I was like, whoa. Um
I'm it's it's
Crazy.
amazing. It's amazing. It's like it's the most magical thing on earth. I think
Rob,
photosynthesis. It's
Robin
amazing.
Wilkins says she has photosynthesis envy, and I'm like, yes, that's so relatable.
Totally. Yep. Yeah.
There'll probably be one more Robin Wildkimmer name drop just because, yeah.
I know. I need to refresh myself. So did you read The Serviceberry?
Oh yeah, yeah. And I was
Okay.
like, I read that in winter, and then I was like going to all these native plant nurseries, and I was like, you need to order a ton of these. Like, it's going to get really popular in the native plant world. And no, I don't think anybody listened to me, and everybody was selling out of service berries that year. So
Yep. Yep.
yeah.
That's funny.
I already
Um,
had us stocked, so we're good.
and did you read her book about mosses?
Oh yeah, and that one's crazy because I had read it in California, and then I was rereading it after living in Oregon for a while, and I was like, I'd gone to so many of these places, like it felt so relatable. So
That's awesome.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
It's kind of like the sleeper book of hers.
yeah, and it's her
Just
first
not
one
as
too.
sexy maybe as service berries and sweetgrass.
I love it. So I have two copies. So
That's great. Well, as a plant scientist, what other books do you love about plants? What are some of the things that you're getting excited about?
that's such a hard question. Well, I loved The Light Eaters. That one was really
Yeah.
good. Let me think. What have I read recently? Well, we were talking about Wendell Berry. We have a little book club, or I'm rereading Restoration Agriculture with them right now. But we went on a whole. I'm a big Wendell Berry fan. And I was telling my book club to reach out to him. He doesn't do email. Like if you email him, it's his son, and he says to send him a letter. So you have to send him a letter. And they
Oh.
were cracking up at that because I could just imagine me trying to be like, "Hey, like Wendell Berry, I'm over here doing this thing. Like, what are you up to?" And uh,
Like,
um,
month delay like we used to do.
I'm just like,
But
he's so cool. He just doesn't even probably have a computer still.
that's
Um,
amazing.
I know. And what else? Oh, oh, I haven't read Michael Pollan's newest book, but it's about consciousness. That's not even related to plants, but I'm a big fan of his. Oh, and this one is really Linda Lynn Hopt. She's does a lot of so she lives in Seattle in Washington, and she writes just all about like how to live in an urban space and still find nature, which I find very powerful. I still
Mm,
live in a small town called McMinnville, but it's not like in raw countryside, and so I get to be out here on the farm all day, but when I go home, it's back to my garden in an urban space, and so it's just trying to find, which a lot of us can relate to, and so just trying to
yeah.
find beauty in those spaces as well, and it exists. There's so much. Like I have Western tanagers in my backyard. It's a really beautiful bird that also kind of looks like it should be exotic. It's bright yellow and orange.
Oh, that's amazing.
Yeah, yeah. I saw one this morning. So, um, yeah, those are some. I could keep going, but those are some of the ones that come to mind right now.
No, that's great. I mean, we could probably do a whole episode, and I probably will be doing a whole episode on birds, and of course I could probably do a whole season on insects and birds, and each element of this community of life that
Yeah,
makes all life possible. But yeah, people forget how important these things are, and the plant diversity really is the one thing that we can do as farmers to incentivize all that, like having the garden, having a diversity of plants besides just our wine crops, and being incentivizing the different kinds of life that bring in the other different kinds of life that bring in all like a cascade of ecological resilience and beauty and all the
yeah,
deliciousness and color and flavor and ultimately like health and soil health and resilience to the farm. um and yeah, so I mean it's like it's I I just love the whole system. Sorry, I get really geeked out about the whole thing.
yeah.
But you said something that made me think, oh, when you were talking about beekeeping, and it is like it's like livestock farming in a way.
Mhm.
Have you ever run across like what the kind of beekeeping that I practiced in Los Angeles is referred to as natural beekeeping, sort of
Mhm.
like natural wine. Like there's a whole ethos to it and everything, but essentially I just put out a hive and wild bees moved in, and it was sort of like, the rent that I charged them for providing them condos was honey. I took some honey once a month, literally. That I was like, that was my joke about it. I would just be like, yeah, I charged, like, and I only took honey during like the flowering season. I kind of gave them the winter off. I
Like
mean, arguably winter is,
LA.
yeah, yeah. I mean, there's flowers year round in LA, but like,
Yeah.
but there's the dominant blooms. I kind of like, gave them a break so that they could, you know, grow and do whatever they want to do, and was wildly successful with it for the most part. I mean, I had one hive move in eventually that was super aggressive, and I had to destroy it because it was like
Ooh,
attacking
I
everybody.
wonder if those are Africanized bees.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I don't know if like, so they use, that's one of the terms that is used for them, but I think it's I don't know if that's
Is that not? Oh my gosh, my beekeeping group needs to hear this.
yeah, no, so I just call them really aggressive bees. Like there's
Okay.
killer bees. I say killer bees rather than, I honestly think the genetics come from South America rather than Africa. I could be wrong
I
about
think
that,
that's
but I'm
what they
pretty
moved
sure that
here
the
from.
Africanized thing might just be, I don't even know where it comes from, honestly. Like I don't know why they started I could be wrong. Maybe the genetics do come from Africa and it's like a totally appropriate word for it, but I
I think
didn't, when I looked into it, I don't remember finding that that was true. At least I'm like not certainty, and for sure they've been here long enough that they're, like it's like a weird thing to call them, because even if they were originally from Africa, like,
Mhm,
they're just part of the local genetics, and I think it's more of a spectrum, and I think part of their genetics are what make the wild honeybees that are still
mhm,
somewhat, from of European origin, actually able to survive and deal with the things like the mites and the varroa mites and everything that
yeah.
can cause colony collapse disorder. And so some percentage of, the genetics is good because it adds resilience to the hive, but like if you get over a certain threshold, there is like this aggression. Like if you get a queen that has enough of these genetics, the hive just is, it's crazy. Like they were, I had hives and we would get stung if we were, it wasn't like they were super friendly. Like these are not the kind of bees like where you just see people like shirtless, like holding the bees and taking, just using a little smoke to keep them calm. Like no way. Like I always wore full whatever because they were not happy to have their honey taken. If we
They're
would, I
not
kind
big.
and if we were like, 20 feet away but in their flight path, they might sting
Yeah.
you, you know what I mean? You're just like, get out of my flight path kind of
Yeah.
thing, but never like followed us or tracked us, whereas this hive, like,
Oh my god.
you would be 30 feet away, nowhere near their flight path, and they would start coming at you, and then if you just walked away, they would probably follow you to your back
Oh
porch.
my
And
god. This was in your
yeah,
backyard too?
yeah, yeah, they were like attacking my neighbors on their back
Oh
porches, and
my
like
god.
and because they've evolved to like, defend themselves against bears and stuff like that, they
Mhm.
know how to take down big mammals. They go for
Oh
your eyes.
my
And
god.
so like they're my neighbors are like, your bees are like aiming for my eyes on my back porch. I was like, okay, stay inside. I'll take care
Oh
of
my
it.
god.
Yeah. Yeah, it was a little brutal. And I don't know if you've ever smelled the bee attack pheromone,
Mhm.
but if you ever do,
I have.
I hope you are in a full bee suit, or else just run for your life.
Yeah. Oh
It
my god.
is so, I mean, it was crazy. Like when I went to destroy the hive, it was probably like 40,000 bees. And I mean, like the air was full of, it was almost like a banana smell. Like it was
Yep,
this really, yeah,
that's
it was crazy. And it was like, and the sound, like as a human, I think we know that sound instinctively. Like we evolved to be a little, like our adrenaline
yeah.
spikes when we hear that.
Oh my
But
god.
this was at a different level. Like I
Oh
was, I was like just on adrenaline for like 2 hours as I was
my
like
god.
taking apart the hive and everything. Yeah, it was that was an experience. But anyway, for the most part, for the most part, had really good luck other than that one hive. And had lots of beautiful honey and got,
Yeah,
and they just moved in,
I
like
love
they just
that.
liked the location where we put the hive, moved in, and we're, like we're decent bees. And
Yeah.
um I think either moved away. They swarmed twice actually, so it was a good sign. It was like
Yeah.
things were good for a while.
Yeah.
Um, and we were able to keep one of the swarms, and then it, like, it's really interesting about bees. Like, they kind of know when they've maxed out an area. So like we tried to keep the third swarm,
Mhm.
and they wouldn't stay. And then we got like we found another swarm and tried to keep it, and it wouldn't stay.
Mhm.
And we were like, oh, maybe they just realized like there's a bee saturation in this
Yeah.
area, and they need to go where there's more food. And yeah, and so we had like a 2-hive backyard for a while. It's really nice. But yeah, I don't know, I mean, have you come across that? Like, literally, you don't have to do anything. Like, you put
Yeah.
out a hive, they move in, you every once in a while steal a little food.
And I lean in that direction, but I was trained in a very traditional way, which was like you
Right,
feed
yeah.
your bees the sugar water, this and that. And so I was doing all those things early on just to like get my hands into it, and then I just have slowly been peeling away, especially when there's so much diversity on this like property that I really don't need to be feeding them. And I mean, it's pretty crazy how much sugar water goes into the honey that people consume, is what I've been learning, is that it's
Yeah,
just common for people to
yeah,
take honey and then just to feed them sugar water after. And I always
right.
want to make sure that there is enough honey. Like, I never take more. I always leave it like a big frame of honey above the hives. And there's been years
Yeah,
when I just haven't felt comfortable taking any, and the tasting room is really okay with that. And this year is going to be a good year. There'll be a good amount of honey to take, but still, with I'm not going to take all of it and then just start feeding them sugar water in fall. That would just hurt. But and honey is really interesting because it's also like it's funny because grapes are wind pollinated, right? So they don't need insects. And
right.
Oregon has got this really cool, and it's starting to spread to other states. It's called the Bee Atlas. And so it's this push from OSU, Oregon State University, to kind of, before they start saving the bees, they want to know what do we have in the state of Oregon? Like, what are the bees that exist here? And so they've been, going out all over catching bees. And what they discovered is there was a lot we didn't know, like, and a lot of new species have been discovered. And then through that program, they've been offering wineries like free data about like entire reports, like multi-page reports, that they're like, take 2 years, take all the pictures of plants on your property, and then from those photos we will tell you which native bees exist or are likely to exist there based off of those plants. And then what we'll do is we'll go the next step and we'll say, if you introduce these 3 species of native plants, you will get this many more bees, the most important 3. And then from there, if you want to like go even above and beyond and get these species of bees, you can introduce these 12 plants. And so it's been we've been working with them, and so that's also just been enhancing the nectar and availability for the honeybees that we have here. And it's just been just a really, I know it's all been free. Like, OSU is just providing this. And so we've had, yes, like a lot more habitat and success with this. And then we record all those. So yeah, it's all of that kind of is that ebb and flow, like trying to stock appropriately. I think it's really easy for you to stock tons of honeybee hives and then have an overabundance of honeybees on the land too. So right now,
Uh-huh.
I mean, I want to work up to 4 or 5. Right now we're at 2, and like that would all be through splitting here and using the genetics here. But other than that, I mean, we also do a raw. The honey we get is, we don't heat it, so we have a
Right.
centrifuge that spins the honey out so it stays raw, so it maintains the like medicinal aspect of it. When you heat honey, you lose a lot of the good
Yeah.
pollen and things like that. You kind of cook it
Yeah.
out. So
Yeah.
and then we give them back, the wax itself, because that's really energy intensive. I do check for mites, and I will use a Formic, which is organic. That's the pain and the sting, that when you get stung, that's what you feel. But I haven't treated this year yet because my mite levels have been low enough.
Yeah.
So I still, yeah, I like to use science. Testing is hard too because you have to kill some bees, which is really hard for beekeepers to do.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, you do an alcohol and you pretty much kill 100 bees and you do a wash, and it doesn't feel good, but you do it for the greater good. So I would say that is probably not very natural beekeeping, but they're
No,
just
but I mean, I will just caveat what I said about this sort of like natural, again, like, this is like anything that gets called natural. It's like let's look at it dispassionately and not like get
Yeah.
caught up in the thing. But I just actually talked to a beekeeper who was saying the same thing, that like a lot of backyard beekeepers might be becoming vectors for
Yeah.
the mites, because they're just not doing the kind of sanitation, they're not doing the kind of like conscientious approach to thinking about this, and so they're creating the perfect conditions for the mites to thrive, and so
Hmm.
they're keeping, they're aiding colony collapse by keeping these backyard bees. So definitely worth doing what you're doing. I mean, thinking about it, learning about it, educating yourself about how to look for the mites and how to, test for them, and to not create an environment where you're doing that. I'll just add that as a big
Hmm.
caveat.
And it's really interesting to just see the interest in bees in wineries, like in general around the valley. Like it's not just us. We have this whole like beekeeping and wine group that meets. We were just at Abbey Road Farms like on Wednesday, looking at their hives, learning how to make nucleus colonies. It's called nukes, like small little
Yeah.
hives. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then we went over to Fair and we with OSU. Anthony's like a big professor there who's doing a lot of this grant writing and this research, and we were just talking about how to create habitat in headlands. And they'd been doing a research study this year of like different kinds of like if we till, if we direct sow, all these different pollinator plants, natives versus non-natives, all these different rows, and the success wasn't great, but then we were just having a brainstorming session about like what would work better, and one of the things I said was like yarrow, and I gave a couple other great native plants that I think could take mowing, and grass competition is what we've been that was the biggest pressure, just because there's these headlands have had so much cover crop dumped on them. Well, like
Hmm.
we love cover crop, but just that seeds out into other areas, and so there's this big seed bank that we have to kind of work with, and so yeah, it's just we're all brainstorming, and we're gonna do a different kind of. I think we might do like an aster yarrow, checker mallow combination
Mm,
this year. Yeah, yeah. So
lovely. As like a cover crop, or as a
headlands for mowed
headlands.
headlands that could still kind of produce a late pollen boost to hives, and like there would be non-irrigated area. So we're gonna try some plugs I think this time, and
Nice.
multiple wineries are going to be working on it together, and then and this is all a grant that OSU has gotten, so it's been
So that's broader than just the Brooks
exactly, yeah, it's a
property. It's a regional effort.
collaborative, like open, everybody just wants to do right by this, which I'm like, what is this about, this like is it because we have more like a flexibility and like money, or I mean I know pockets are a little tight right now, but I'm just so fascinated by this like drive for vineyards to have like pollinator pathways and corridors, and is it because we invite people onto our farms and we want them to look really lovely? That might be part of it. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, well, that was going to be my question for you. Was like, I mean, you mentioned it, and of course, anybody in wine knows that like you don't need honeybees to produce grapes. Like, you don't really need pollinators because they're perfect flowers. Wine grapes are perfect flowers, so the pollen is right there next to the where it needs to pollinate. And so what's the why would a winery invest any resources in this kind of stuff?
Oh man, the very question I just asked. I mean, I have my theories and I have my personal vendettas. Yeah, I for me, I would for the Brooks property, I would say it's because well, one of the things is, for certain like the biodynamic certification I was saying earlier, you need a certain percentage of your land that is allocated, that's diversified from vines. And so you
Yeah.
ideally that's a healthy ecosystem that has, different trees and flowers. And it doesn't need to be like a tended garden that's producing food. It can just even be, I mean, a lot more vineyards have amazing forested, hills and tucked areas that they can use. And we have more of an exposed hill that I've been trying to rewild and make into a food forest. So that
Mm,
would be one
yeah.
reason. I think
That's the expansion of the garden, right? That
yeah,
the new part.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. The willow arches that will be, and willow is really good because it's an early pollinator. Like in March, it's just loaded. It's I
Oh
think
wow. So
trees
it
are
gives the insect something early on in the season
yeah.
when other things are scarce, when other food sources are scarce.
Yeah, and I think people forget like even willows and the earlier one that I just learned about recently was that the native what is the what's the nut that we have out here all the
The hazelnut.
yeah, the beaked hazel, the native beaked hazel is a really early pollen source as well. And
Yeah,
I've been planting them because I just think they're beautiful trees and the birds love the nuts. But I was like, oh my God, that's an early pollen source. That who would have known?
that's great. Yeah,
So I think also though a lot since we already do have so many gardeners out in Oregon, maybe it is just because people want to have, better pollinated food crops. And it could also be that aspect of weed tasting rooms are oftentimes right by the vines. And so, um, oh my gosh, the Alice Waters has this quote that beauty is the language of love. And so like when there are flowers, it kind of just shows a level of care and concern for,
what a
the
great quote.
the planet, right? Oh, it just sticks with me. She's amazing.
Um, is there a mindset shift that you think is required or is part of valuing the incorporation of the stuff that you do? Where, of course, right? Of course, we need to support ourselves and make a living, but where the farming is about something bigger than that.
Yeah.
Um, I mean, how like I don't know. Do you think that that's part of it as well? Just
Yeah.
like seeing that you're farming something beyond a cash crop,
Yeah. No, I
or
think
changing what you think you're farming.
yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I know exactly. Yeah. So, in farming, maybe like soil health or community or, yeah, this love of land. And so I think one of the big mind shifts that I've been trying to like advocate for is a more of an embracing of a wilder aesthetic. I leave a lot of areas unmowed with tall grasses and every where it's a small little hill and every neighbor around us is like out there every week mowing their little tidy lawns. I mean, and they're not little actually. It's like an acre or two of lawn that they're mowing on their
Yeah, yeah,
and they're kicking up so much dust, which is, precious topsoil. And I love the look of the tall grass. And it hides the gophers. So, they don't have the gopher traps. This is not in the vines. I would love
right,
it if
right.
we could go taller there too. And we do, we push our cover crop and, let it stay nice and long for a good period of time. But these are, these headlands we're talking about.
Yeah,
And so that, and then, I think some people might be put off by it at first, but when they realize it's intentional, you can start to see some beauty in it. It's not neglect, right? It's left there because it's whimsical and it's providing all this habitat and that's kind of difficult sometimes to teach to the people who are on the tractors who really want to mow everything. And I just had 3 ponderosa pines that were mowed yesterday.
yeah.
They're little babies and I just watered them that morning too. And
Then
that
they
was
got mowed.
devastating. Yeah, and there was all this, it must have looked like weeds, right? But they were all this like shady phacelia that was I had sowed, and was going to be a lot of gumweed and tarweed, which also could look like. I mean, weed is in the name, but it was all this native intentional blend, and it all got mowed because, and that is not the first time that's happened, and I don't think it'll be the last. But you just kind of keep planting and keep trying to stake and hope you've communicated that that's a no mow space, and so
Yep,
it's an ethos I'm still working on.
yep.
With other people, but I think we're better than we were, and we're getting we're pushing it every year. It gets better, it gets crazier looking.
Yep. Well, we should talk about the vines a little bit.
Yeah.
you have a you have some really old vines that are unrooted there.
Yeah, they're most of them are 50 now, if not a little bit younger. And yeah, unrooted is very I don't know if it's very rare, but it's not so common out here.
No, yeah. I mean, there's it's surprising how many unrooted vines there are in Oregon and Washington, actually.
Yeah, right.
I mean, Washington less so because it's so arid where they're growing a lot of them. But the Willamette Valley is only arid end of the season.
Yeah,
um, yeah. So I mean, there's and I know that phylloxera is there, and as some of these blocks grow older and older, they do start dying off slowly.
yep,
But I think you guys have figured out that like low till or no till is a way to slow that spread because you're not moving the louse around in the soil, and so it's a much slower progression of decline for the vineyard. But yeah, I mean, what I saw there were some pretty healthy old vines
yeah.
um, when I was standing amongst them. And
Were you there when the cover crop was up?
oh yeah, yeah,
Good.
the cover crop was like at the level of the cordons actually, or
Yeah.
of the canes. So you
Yeah,
don't
if
really
you
have
were,
cordons. You have
so sorry. If you were able to get lower too, the Phacelia really took off lower in the more of the Riesling vines. But in the
nice. Yeah.
red,
What are the so I mean obviously Pinot Noir, but Riesling was the other big one
yeah.
that's trying to convert me on.
There's a bias towards Riesling in this winery. Everybody is, yeah, very pro Riesling. It's a prerequisite for hiring, so they will try
That's hilarious.
to.
Yeah,
um,
well,
but yeah, and those are fun because they're a little bit taller. So they're I love the whimsy of like a tall vine. But
oh, don't get
we
me
also
started.
we also well, now I also know Pinot Gris is you have some thoughts on it, but Pinot Gris. And then and with that too, there's some like weird table grape that's kind of coming in. We don't know, like it must be from old roots. We're really it's kind of a weird, funky, fun situation.
Oh,
And they've just been
interesting.
making a field blend wine with it all.
That's
So
great.
yeah, it's smaller because it's so like I think I said it's 18 acres of vines, which is small. And I mean it's very. I was talking to Pascal, who is technically the owner, and he's been in France for a while, and he was saying that I get a little bit. I want more land to play with and incorporate more animals in. And he's like, no, like 18 acres is pretty big actually in comparison to like most European, farms. And
Right, right.
and I tell other people in like the Oregon grape community, I was just like, oh, it'd be so fun if we had, like 90 acres. And they're just like, no, we're so jealous that you guys only have to, like, you could be so much more intimate and get, touch every piece of that land with like a lot more intentionality because it is so small. So I
Yeah,
just go ahead.
it's funny. I mean, I worked on a 25-acre vineyard, and my thinking at the end of working on it was too big to be small and too small to be big. It was like the perfect wrong size.
Yeah.
Like you had so much work that it was like too
Yeah.
much work for like a small crew, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Almost. Uh, but it was not enough work that you got the economies of scale where
Yeah.
you can like, it wasn't big enough where you're just like, yeah, like you start to like be able to just, get that economy of scale from having enough. And it's the perfect wrong size right there. So 18 is right at the threshold. You're perfect. Don't go any bigger. You're good.
Yeah. Um, but what's great is we have this on the hill. We have these, connections with all of these other farmers. That like we have the farmer below us is his name's Crannel, and we've been farming with him for. I mean, it's his land, and he's been, he was born on this hill. I don't even know. He's just that kind of old guard of farmer, but he's just been open to he's seen how our like vine health has been, and like our progress and our he just trusts us. And so we've been collaborating with him on his farming practices. And he's not 100% no till, but he is, willing to let us do the biodynamic sprays on his land. And he's really, his cover crop actually always looks the best. We're always like, what's your secret? So then, and we have another neighbor across the street that we also is Carl Muska, and I don't know the size of his vines specifically, but he also is just like working kind of in this like kind of like I was saying, the community aspect of just like almost farming this hillside all together in community, and we buy all of his grapes and have been doing that for maybe 10 years now.
Yeah.
Which is this is maybe the way it's supposed to be done, right? We all own a little bit and we can all work together and collaborate instead of it being this one corporation that owns 300 acres and is trying to tend all of those in just one monolithic way.
Right. Right. Yeah. That's really cool to think of. I mean, I wish more of that was happening in wine country, especially in AVAs, where you're all, pulling, theoretically you could all be like pulling oars in the, to row in the same direction.
Yeah.
And you could be thinking about a hillside instead of like about property borders, like, because like,
Yeah.
great, you're the bottom of the hill, they're the top of the hill, but like it's all one hill, it all, we all share the same
Yeah.
consequences of farming this hill. Yeah, I love that perspective.
And Crannel has, and us, we have no fences. Like, I mean, it would be great to have a deer fence, but we're just kind of working with what we have. And so it does feel like one continuous vineyard, which is really beautiful.
Right. Yeah, that's great. Yeah. So how are the deer with your
I chased one out of the garden in the middle of the
farming?
day yesterday, which is crazy. Middle of the day.
That's amazing. Well, you've created a spot that
Yeah,
apparently is attractive.
and I realized too, as I plant more trees and create more hedgerows, it's only going to be more happy for the deer. And I mean, that's a sacrifice
Right.
I'm willing to make. The owner might be listening to this podcast and is like, "What?" Um, so
Well, I mean, not to be like macabre, but like you guys do have a kitchen, and if you could serve venison dishes as well.
So there
Um,
is. We're not against that. The situation is it's, I think it's like illegal, or if we did want to get a hunting license, you technically have to give it over to the like food kitchen, or the like it's like
oh,
a
that's right. You
kitchen.
could,
Yeah.
yeah,
So
like the selling of wild meat has some complications legally.
yeah. So
Yeah.
we just, yeah, I think we got a permit. We never actually even used it, but there was talk of getting a hunting permit and having to donate that getting to donate that to a food kitchen.
Right. Yeah.
So I don't think we ever, but yeah, some years it gets like that. But it's mostly just the edges, and yeah, I feel like I've heard this on this podcast before. It's just like part of, yeah, it's not all for us. Some of the deer get it, and some of the birds get it, and then some of the chickens get it, and
Yeah.
hopefully there's
Yeah.
enough
You were
of us.
talking about Verizon. I was like, I swear I've seen my chickens eat green grapes too.
Well, there's always a few that still manage to get out of the fence area, like a few tiny bantams, and I'm like, well, let's just, hope that they're small enough that they won't do too much damage.
Right. Right. I mean, at this point in LA, I realized I'm farming for squirrels. Unless unless I want to become really vicious with the squirrels, I'm basically they like my grapes when they hit around when they're as soon as they're red, they like it, even if they're not fully like fully phenolically developed. They're not as discerning in their in their in their palate as I am, and
I
so
mean,
they're perfectly happy to harvest all my grapes before I'm ready to harvest them. And they are doing
yeah,
that.
the new podcast name is Farming for Squirrels.
Yeah.
I'll listen.
um, well, what did we miss? I mean, there's so much we could dig into further, but I want to, in respect of your time, and I just want to make sure that we haven't missed anything that is really important.
Uh, yeah, we could talk forever. But yeah, I feel like that's probably enough to digest. There's probably a lot of topics that we've reached, and I don't want to over analyze and over get into all the nitty gritty details. And yeah, we didn't even talk about compost or soil, but we'll have to let somebody else do that.
Yeah, it's coming. It's coming soon, honestly. Yeah, no, I mean, I've just realized, right? There's all these fundamentals that, like, when we've been doing this for a while, when anybody with like a certification, like you guys have, like some sort of regenerative, organic,
Mhm.
biodynamic certification, we're in the space so often, and we take so much of this for granted. But like, there's some really cool stuff that I think it's worth reminding everybody about, especially if new people are tuning into the podcast, or just, you know, just new findings in the way that soil works and the microbiology of the soil works,
Yeah.
and the way that the amazing part of plants. And I will tell you a little story that I heard recently. Um, I was at this conference the past few days called Mindset, which is a regenerative focused conference. Really lovely, amazing people there. Like so many things I could say and probably will be saying over the course of the next whatever months, as I do podcasts and these things come up, and probably
Mhm.
talk to some of the people that I met there for the podcast. But um, John Kempf, who does the Regenerative Agriculture podcast, which is a great podcast, is much broader. I mean, in fact, he like his one thing that he probably doesn't know much about is viticulture. But he has interviewed, like uh, Evo from Gergich and Greg Pennyroyal from down in Temecula about viticulture. He was one of the keynote speakers and told, among many other things, which again, it will all come out at some point. His ideas were really inspiring. Um, he told a story about a study that was done where they put a couple plants in a room, and then they had like five different people or something like that, who were participants in the study, and one of them was selected, like drew the short straw, and they were selected to go into the room. And I think there literally was like a drawing of straws kind of thing. They were selected to go in the room, and they ripped out and killed one of the plants, right? And so then they had sensors on the other plant, and so then that person leaves the room, and one by one each of the people would come back into the room, and the plant didn't react until the person who
Oh my God.
had ripped out the other plant, and it reacted. It reacted like it was freaking out. Like the I think it was what do they call those, like a lie detector, what are those like things called, a
Oh,
somethingograph,
yeah, yeah, yeah. The
um
polygraph? Is that what it is?
polygraph. Yeah, I think it was like a polygraph technology. And
Wow.
like so the polygraph just went nuts
Oh my
when this person came into the room. And um then they did another study
God.
when, like, they brought that same person into the room, and there was a new plant, and like the person went to destroy that plant again. They realized that the polygraph started going crazy that was attached to the other plant before they actually took the action of like killing the other plant. Like the plant was reading the intention
Oh my
of
God.
destroying the other plant. And and so, the message that John had was like, think about your intention when you're farming. Think about, not like, maybe it's not about, I mean, maybe the to produce the most beautiful wine, you shouldn't go out thinking about like the work that you have to do, and the fact that you got to, like, there's these financial concerns and everything like that. But think
Mhm.
about building a beautiful space for your plants,
Mm.
because they might appreciate that a lot more, and,
Yeah.
and respond a lot better to the ideas that you're putting out when you're doing the things that you do with them. And maybe having space around your vineyard, in your vineyard, uh, on the landscape, to do what you're doing, Shannon, is part
Mhm.
of that.
Yeah. So you're telling me when I was removing all those blackberries, they were like structurally. No, I'm just kidding.
No, I
Yeah.
thought about that too. I mean, I do a lot of whacking of
I know. I'm feeling
different things,
guilty.
and I'm definitely like a plant hitman at times. And then I'm like, man, I wonder, wonder what their neighbors are
Yeah.
thinking.
Was exactly where my thought was going to. No, I mean, and it is a reminder to just. I think I'll like start reading very biodynamic, like get really into the trenches, and then I'll like be farming with like this deep intentionality for a week, and then something else crosses my path, or I just get it's my attention span, and maybe it's just we just forget about things that were on our mind so aggressively like days ago. They just kind of fall out, and so I'm just how do we keep that with us every day? How do we show up with that as a reminder?
Yeah.
Um, that's too. I mean, I don't know. I'll have to figure it out.
Yeah. Well, thank you for this conversation. It's really
Yeah.
great to hear, and sounds like a beautiful place to work
Yeah.
and taste wine too.
Yeah, it's feel very lucky. I love my work, and it is a beautiful space to be in. I don't take that for granted, especially yeah, with just the world right now. So it's a privilege, and I really never take it for granted.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks so much for listening, and a big thanks to Colden Pro for the music at the beginning and the end of this episode. And if you'd like to support this episode and everything that I do at Beyond Organic Wine, you probably can do that best by becoming a subscriber at beyondorganicwine.substack.com or on the Substack app. Thank you so much for your support.